Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Some of the attributes an adult has compared to a child are, for instance, the ability to plan ahead, to have a more sophisticated worldview, and more power of analysis. And for instance, if you want to go to the store to buy some groceries, you plan ahead the day according to, for instance, the time of the day, with the weather, with how you're going to get dressed according to the weather. If you're going to take your car, you're going to take your bike, you're going to get your wallet. What else do you need over there? Maybe you put together a list before you walk out of the door. You should have a lot of things already thought of. So this is one of the characteristics. Plan ahead, think ahead, and think of the consequences, okay? Make sure you got enough gas in your car, and if you don't, what should you do? Stop at the gas station first and then continue. Plan ahead. Otherwise, you will be very, very short-sighted, and you will be surprised at every corner. That's one. And the other one is the ability to think in an abstract way, or think in a more sophisticated way. So not so simple, not black, white, good, evil. And we have here, unfortunately, a very important person in the NATO. And this guy is making some claims that I think are laughable. Laughable, but actually they shouldn't be laughable because he's a very important person. So they're serious. So let's see what's going on here. So we have this guy right here. And this article is from Ukrainska Pravda. This article is from today, the 28th of January 2023. This is the title. Top NATO official says alliance ready for direct confrontation with Russia. Well, it's always good to be ready, you know what I mean? It's always good. But I started reading the article and I got a different kind of understanding out of this article. I thought, okay, that's good, you're ready. Well, let's see if this guy planned ahead based on his statements, and let's see what this article is all about, right? He's an admiral, Admiral Rob Bauer, chair of the NATO Military Committee, has said that the alliance is ready for a direct confrontation with Russia. Is there any, any evidence to support this? Okay, could be. I would like to hear them. So Bauer said this in an interview with RTP, a Portuguese public broadcasting organization. And I'm quoting from RTP. Rob Bauer insists that NATO is prepared for a direct confrontation with Russia and admits that rearmament is the alliance's top priority. Obviously, not the training of admirals. He also acknowledges that the organization has lost its monopoly on military initiative, end quote. So we know, I think, the way I know the world works, that this guy could be in someone else's pockets talking about, military initiative and armament. Bauer recalled that during the NATO summit in Madrid last year, the alliance decided to establish 4 additional multinational battle groups in Bulgaria, Hungary, Romania, and Slovakia in response to Russia's actions in Ukraine. And I'm quoting Mr. Admiral Bauer. This is an important signal for Russia that we are prepared if they decide to go after NATO. Okay, well, why would the Russians go after NATO? And he says this is a red line. If there is a red line, then it is the Russians crossing our borders. All right, the chair of the NATO Military Committee said. So his red line is the Russians are crossing NATO borders. Okay, it's understandable, logical, but is there any evidence that they want to do that? Okay, Bauer said that NATO countries ought to gear civilian industrial production to the needs of the military and expressed his support for the idea of a, and I'm quoting, war economy in peacetime. Again, I think I'm right about who owns this admiral. He added that he believes that Russia's strategic objectives go beyond Ukraine. Okay, let's hear the evidence, right? Because he made a belief, a statement. He is not really allowed to make statements based on his beliefs, but he is on his assessments and evidence and intelligence, information and strategies. Anyway, so let's see what could be his evidence, what evidence he provides. With Moscow wanting to claim the territory of the former Soviet Union. So he believes that Russia's strategic objectives go beyond Ukraine because Moscow, without evidence, wants to claim the territory of the former Soviet Union. Well, as of now, he didn't support his both claims. Now, when asked whether NATO feared escalation in the Russian-Ukrainian war, Bauer said that while the beginning of the Russian aggression constituted an escalation, Ukraine's desire to reclaim the territory that rightly belonged to it is not an escalation. And I'm quoting, "If the Russians stop the war today, there will be no escalation," Bauer stressed. All right, so that means that if someone attacks me in the street, and let's read the last sentence here. On January 19, Rob Bauer said that Russia will remain a threat to NATO even if its forces are defeated in Ukraine. Well, that's a very shallow way of saying things. So let me analyze this statement here. So he says that the Russians, the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine was Russian aggression, and that was an escalation. And Ukraine's desire to reclaim the territory that rightly belonged to it is not an escalation. All right, well, that's true to a certain extent. So let's see. I'm down the street walking, okay? And someone gets close to me, punches me in the face, and gets my wallet. Sticks his hand in wherever I get my wallet, takes my wallet. That's the territory he got from me, right? And I want it back. I take my gun and I do this. Boom, 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 boom. Now, which one was an escalation? Obviously, the guy taking my wallet was an escalation. But that was an escalation of the escalation? Yes, and you will be charged with that in a court of law. Why? Because you used little force to claim something, you upped it. So how is Mr. Bauer going to answer that? That's one thing. If the Ukrainians are defending themselves, I understand that. If the Ukrainians are reacting to the Russians' advancement, I understand that. But this guy is very evasive. So that means that because the Ukrainians are trying to get their land back, anything is justified? I don't think so. Well, he didn't say that, but he just left it like, if the Ukrainians want to take it back, that's not an escalation. Well, it depends. It depends on what kind of force they're going to use. If they use nuclear weapons and the Russians will not, now that's an escalation, even if it's under the umbrella of regaining their territory. Now, the other claim that the Russians want to form their Soviet Union, that's no evidence to support that. I don't know anything like that. I haven't heard anybody saying like that. And they are using only one thing. The idea that the Russians are bad and they're just upset that they lost the Cold War. I did this because it's more than that. And the Putin statement that we all got to know, which he lamented at one time, Putin in an interview saying that, well, the fall of or disintegration of the Soviet Union was the greatest catastrophe of the 20th century. And everybody was, see, he wants to get it back. Well, that is like I say, as Nietzsche, the German philosopher, said, God is dead. See, Nietzsche was against God. Nietzsche was an idiot. Well, if you take it like that, yeah, you can interpret it like that. But if you put it in the context of whatever he said after and before, then it doesn't make the same impact on, oh, Nietzsche's an idiot, he wanted to, oh, God is that stupid Nietzsche. I heard that mentioned in many churches I went in by biblical scholars. And if you know, remember, Nietzsche said, God is dead and we killed him. And it's more than that if you read the whole paragraph and his point on that. But hey, sometimes to think it hurts. And whereas the other thing with Putin, he said why he claimed that that was the biggest tragedy or catastrophe of the 20th century, go and see what he said, because of dislocation and how the families were found to be separated and separate, because a lot of people were in different areas of the Soviet Union and they were displaced. I don't know, he gave a number of how many Russians were outside of the territory of Russia itself at the time when that happened. And this is what he meant, an economic and social tragedy. That's what he meant. But I'm not here to apologize for him. You just listen to Putin and you're gonna understand what he said. But these guys take it out of context. So this guy said that the Russians won the Soviet Union again. I don't think that's evidence to support that. It's just interpretations, edited interpretation of certain kind of statements. Now this guy again, how did I start this video? By saying that adults have the ability to think ahead. I would ask Admiral Bauer when he said that they are ready to react. Well, react in what way? Do you think that the Russians will just cross with T-72s and with Sukhoi 35 and with Ka-8 or something, Mi-8 or something, with the helicopters? Is that what he thinks they're going to do? And with Ura, and they're going to get old AK-47? Is that how he thinks? I think so. I think so. If there's going to be any confrontation between NATO and Russia, did he take into consideration that the Russians might use, let's say, nuclear weapons? And if yes, then what would be the NATO's answer? Nuclear weapons? Okay, and then what would be the Russians' answer? Nuclear weapons, and then the other guys, nuclear weapons. And what will be the end of it? The end of all of us. So Mr. Bauer thinks in his, assessment or belief, let's put it like this, that Russia will somehow invade or do something to NATO states as it did to Ukraine for certain reason. And let's get to this. Why did Russia say they invaded Ukraine again? Is it because NATO wanted to put troops and all that, get Ukraine into NATO? Oh, you say it's okay with that? Russia should have been okay with that? All right, well then, I guess that, 1962 was everything okay with the Cuban Missile Crisis, right? Do you remember how the Americans reacted to the Soviets? Remember how hysterically they reacted to something they did themselves. Moreover, they had nuclear weapons in Turkey, Jupiter, that's how they were called, Jupiter nuclear weapons. Check them out. And Khrushchev told the Americans, you take your freaking things out of Turkey. And the Americans did the same thing as they did with Ukraine. What are they going to do about it? Well, I'm going to do the same thing to you. And he said, I'm going to build launching pads in Cuba. And they started working on that. They didn't transfer any rocket in Cuba, any nuclear weapon in Cuba. And the Americans are all, my God. So if the Russians should have felt unthreatened by NATO being in Ukraine, then I guess they shouldn't be feeling threatened, let's say, if the Russians will bring again rockets and military equipment in, I don't know, Nicaragua, which seems to be very eager to do that, or maybe Cuba, or let's say Mexico. They should be A-okay. Do you think the United States will say, it's okay, it's fine? You know the answer. So the Admiral here is a weasel who didn't think ahead what the hell he's supposed to say. First, Russia will not get in a conventional altercation with NATO, hot war. Not what's going on in Ukraine right now, like that. No. Why? Because I don't think Russia would be able to win such a war against NATO. I mean, I'm pretty sure they can't. They cannot. Now this guy wants a military industry, a military war economy in Europe. You know what it is? Someone is going to make a lot of profits. I wonder who those are. His guys? So just an analysis on this admiral who talks, I think, very shallow. Very shallow. It's all right. I've seen many like him, so another one will not change my assessment on this guy's abilities. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.